Welcome to Breaking Down Bergman. I'm David Friend.
I'm Sonia Strimban.
And we are looking at The Touch.
Det finns ingenting att oroa sig för. Nej, men alla proven har ju sagt precis detsamma.
Thank
Vi är
you.
överens om det.
Skål.
Det säger ju Dr. Brun också. Så,
I want to tell you something.
vänta.
The first time we met,
Ursäkta mig,
you were sitting in the cloakroom.
David, will you please excuse me? It's a consultation. It's somewhat touchy. I'll be with you in a second. Make yourself comfortable.
Yes?
You were sitting in the cloakroom of the hospital, crying. I suppose it's hardly the thing to tell you, but I fell in love with you.
Which wine glasses, Mama?
We're going to have white wine.
Where are they?
Second shelf to the right.
Okay.
I didn't mean for you ever to know. But as chance, or whatever it is, has made us friends, I can't help telling you. I'm in love with you, Karen. I don't want you to worry or to be upset with this confession of mine. But I'm in love with you, and I want you to know it.
Okay, so many of you probably have not seen this film, and you're not losing out.
Yeah, okay, we'll make that clear right from the get-go. This film is pretty much a disaster in all respects, and it's really disappointing because there's some great talent in this movie, and none of it works. None of it comes together.
Nope, not at all. And it's particularly disappointing because it's the beginning of a new decade, and we closed off the other decade fairly well, and I think we were looking forward to some things in the 70s that were going to be newer and better, and instead we start with The Touch.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we should note about this movie is it was a US-Swedish co-production. So, I mean, from the start, it just seems like things were doomed. Bergman was working out of his element. One of the ways was that he was making an English language film, which, to be honest, at first I was a little bit excited about because, I mean, there aren't many times that we are going to watch a Bergman movie and not have to read subtitles. So I was looking forward to that. And I mean, it's sort of a simplistic thing to look forward to. But once this movie started rolling, I just realized this isn't something to look forward to. I mean, we've got Bibi Andersson, we've got Max von Sydow, and they are some of the best actors in Bergman films, but everything they do in this movie is a misstep. It doesn't work. And Bergman chose Elliot Gould, an American actor, to lead the film. He isn't the kind of actor that Bergman would choose traditionally. He's not a thespian. And I think it really comes across that Gould was out of his element, and I think Bergman saw that in retrospect.
But I guess there wasn't much he could do about it at that point. You just kind of have to push forward. For me, aside from the language, and I think the fact that it made it stilted and flatter, one of the other challenges was that the script itself, the dialogue, was rather weak. And that's not something that's typical of Bergman films.
Yeah, one thing I mentioned to you when we watched it is that it seemed as if this was translated from Swedish into English. There was that sort of stilted, very structured feeling to it. The conversations didn't feel natural, and they didn't really feel literary either. It was somewhere in the middle where...
It was kind of soap opera-like in some places.
Even that's an insult to soap operas.
I've no idea why I've come here to you today or why I'm going to bed with you. I don't even know if I'm in love with you. Forgive me for saying all that.
I understand.
I suppose it's not a very good way to start an affair.
But it's not just the dialogue, it's also the fact that the entire plot line, the story really, is just kind of passé, if you will. Like, it's really predictable, it's not surprising. You know, it opens with the scene of her mother dying, which in any other Bergman film should have been a rich, traumatic event that really, you know, laid the groundwork for the remainder of the film and her psychology and all that kind of stuff. And in this film, it ends up being just this tiny little plot twist which makes her sad and therefore she has an affair. Like, it's really just mundane, kind of, like banal. When we read reviews of this film, many of the critics referenced banality as being kind of the central element of the film, and therefore it was sort of okay for it to be that flat, you know, and one-dimensional. But I don't think that's really an excuse for Bergman, who is such an adept director. And even if you are commenting on things that are banal, you can do it in a much more interesting way. Here, I think it was more a hazard.
Yeah, and there was silly symbolism scattered throughout this film, most of it revolving around this Madonna that is excavated by Elliot Gould's character, who is an archaeologist. And it begins to represent the relationship that he has with Bibi Anderson's character. And in the most ridiculous way, this wooden statue is eaten out from the inside by an infestation of bugs. And it's like, what? Really? This is what you came up with, Bergman, after all of these fantastic films full of depth? All you could come up with was a statue that was rotting from the inside, basically?
Yeah, it's a very simplistic parallel to their relationship.
And it was hard to even understand their relationship. I mean, this affair that goes on is so incredibly boring.
Yeah, it is quite boring. I mean, you have this love triangle, which is just like, whatever, you shrug your shoulders at it.
Yeah.
Because it's just so obvious, you know, she's got this clean-cut husband at home who's fair-haired and blue-eyed and very proper and has a great job. And so, obviously, she chooses a lover who's the opposite of that, who's rowdy and unpredictable and slightly dangerous, mysterious.
Okay, but there's one element that's missing from this affair, and it's passion. I mean, the sex scenes, if we can call it that, in the movie are awkward at best. If anything, they made me feel nervous, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I think because the passion was lacking, and I'm not sure whether it was because of the poor acting or what. I think Bergman tried to substitute it with violence.
Yeah.
And so you have this aggression that's in the Elliot Gould character that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And then I think he's trying to link it back to some of the things that worked for him in previous films. So, for example, the characters that had the most disturbed psychology were also ones that had some kind of weird sexual deviance or proclivity. And so here he makes him have an incestuous relationship with his sister.
Which was completely out of left field.
Completely, and it did not fit in the movie whatsoever, and it was really random. I think I struggle the most with the fact that I can't even remotely relate to any of these characters or even slightly care about anything that they do. They are just so flat and two-dimensional and irrelevant that it makes no sense. And none of their challenges, none of the obstacles that they face, none of their motivations are even remotely interesting or realistic. And so you can't invest in them whatsoever. Even when you have tragic scenes, like, for example, the hint and the danger of the fact that Elliot Gould's character at one point tried to commit suicide and then survived it and overcame it, it's referenced so poorly in the film, and it's brought up at such a non-functional point in the movie that it just kind of, you hear it and you move on. And I think because all of these elements fall so flat, and obviously Bergman is recognizing it as he's directing the film and watching it back, he keeps trying to amplify the film further and further to make it have more depth, more impact, more emphasis. And so then we start to get references to, you know, Elliot Gould and his family being Holocaust survivors and the tragedy that brought, which is completely not relevant to the fabric of the film or the characters whatsoever.
But even visually, I didn't really know what to do with the touch. I mean, the transfers that exist right now aren't the best, so it's really not the true image, to be fair, that Bergman wanted us to see. But we do have the clues and a lot of the evidence of how this film might have looked in theaters. And no matter how it's formatted, you can see the use of the camera is confusing to me. I mean, there's a lot of very close-up shots of people's faces, of Bergman trademark, but then there's these weird zooms and awkward cameras following people in a close-up shot. And it didn't really serve to any purpose, at least that I could tell. And instead it was distracting, and it added to the parody of what this film has sort of become. I mean, you would think Bergman, as a director with his experience, wouldn't want to make a film that looked so amateurish. But instead, what we really have here with The Touch, in my opinion, is what becomes the kind of cult classic of people who play drinking games or just laugh at someone who has a career of, you know, stellar productions, but has this inexplicable stumble in the middle of them. And Bergman has been ashamed of a few of his films. This Can't Happen Here, most notably. He had it pulled from theaters and tried to sort of bury it as if it never happened. But I think if you're Ingmar Bergman, you should be looking at The Touch and saying, maybe this is the movie that I should be most ashamed of, because in comparison to This Can't Happen Here, this is a disaster.
For me, what I find curious is that he's working with two of his most veteran actors, Bibi Anderson and Max von Sydow, and you would think that they would have said something.
But we don't really know how much control the Hollywood executives had over the film. And I think the fact that the film was shot in two versions, one of them being entirely in English and the other one being partly in English and partly in Swedish, with both Bibi and Max doing their scenes alone in their native language, it brings into question really who this film was for and who was calling the shots.
I am really disappointed that this, of all films, is the last Max von Sydow film that we're going to see from Bergman.
Yeah, I mean, The Touch all around is a disappointment, and I don't like making videos like this because we're pretty much just sitting here sort of ragging on Bergman for making a film that we really dislike. And there's not really that much that we can attach to and say, see, this is why it doesn't work. You almost, even though you discourage them, you almost have to go out there and see it for yourself. It's a real head scratcher. So considering everything that we've said, I still have to ask, is it essential Bergman?
No.
But, caveat, it would be a great drinking game, and the movie has to be seen to be believed. The Touch, the drinking game. A shot for every awkward moment, or awkward scene, or strange line that just doesn't fit. You'll be wasted in minutes.
And frankly, you needed to take the edge off.
It's true.
Yeah, I think this film is better left out of the Bergman kind of retrospective or the Bergman canon. In fact, I'm looking forward to the next film in the series.
Yes, Cries and Whispers will be the next title, and I'm very confident that this is a better film than The Touch. I'm going to hold out hope for that. But in the meantime, you can check us out on YouTube, where we have all our older videos.
Or visit our Facebook page for more discussion.
And we will see you next time on Breaking Down Bergman.